Let's do the 4 limitless contemplations. Such an important prayer. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Sem jendam je dewatang dewe jupang jutang dempa juchik, dungal tang dungal chichutang trawa juchik, dungal mepe dewa tampatang mindrawa juchik, nering chaktang nitang drawe tang nom chempo la nepa juchik. So if you just came on, good morning to everybody. Try and put your cameras on if you can, so I can see your beautiful faces. It really inspires me. So what we're going to do after all that talking already is the golden letters, realizing the essential profound Dharma. So the golden letters is the most beautiful, beautiful text. And I said to you last year, I'm going to teach you from my little silver book where I've got all my real notes from it. But if you look at the golden letters, these were Dzogchen. I just want to get the exact page for you, sorry. These were 5 series. There were 5 series of written texts. One was called the golden letters. One was called the copper letters. One was called the variegated letters. One was called the conch shell letters. And one was called the turquoise letters. And they were all compiled by a Vidyadhara. A Vidyadhara means a master with knowledge holding. So someone who is able to hold the knowledge is called a Vidyadhara. And most of the beings that were around Guru Rinpoche when he was here were Vidyadharas. Sometimes they're called Vajradharas, but they're the holders of the knowledge. So one Vidyadhara called Vimalamitra compiled the distilled essence of the Dzogchen Nyingtik. That's the heart essence teachings. And we're not going straight onto them before we've done a lot of other things. But he wrote those 5 texts. And out of them, the Golden Letters collection is the most important text in this collection. And it is the actual message that Garib Dorje, who was the first human Dzogchen Ati Yoga teacher, and I'm going to explain everything to you. I'm just giving you a little bit of background. Their golden letters were those 3 statements, which Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche has written so much about. I've studied every detail of what he's written. And the golden letters are really important. But before you can actually study the golden letters, which we're going to do, you need to have good background, solid background. And that's why I'm asking you to butt in. I'm asking you to ask questions. I want you to understand it. So by the time you come to really looking at the golden letters, you've got a very good understanding of how you climb the mountain. Because some people can skip climbing the mountain, but only if they've climbed the mountain in previous lifetimes. That's the point. If you haven't, then you do need to take the teaching step by step by step. But I thought of starting from my beautiful book, another book that I love with all my heart. It's also a text called Boundless Vision by Tulku Tsolo and translated by Tulku Tondrup. And he is one of my favorite authors. I don't know about you, Karen, if you read a lot, but I love what he says. But in the beginning of the book, he does just a little dedication. And I just want to read you this. He says, dedicated to the realization of Dzogchen throughout a world free of sectarian restraint. sectarian restraint through a world. Now, I love that dedication because I think I think that sectarianism, whether it's even in Buddhism or whether it's in any religion, I think sectarianism has caused more problems in the world, more wars in the world. Sometimes when I look at the wars, I wonder, what are people fighting for? They're fighting because they think their religion is right. They think what they're doing is right. And why can't we just allow people the freedom to believe and think what they like? Now, this Dzogchen Ning, especially the Ning Tik, the heart essence of it, is really non-sectarian. So in his Boundless Vision, which is about that, he says, dedicated to the realization of Dzogchen throughout a world free of sectarian restraint. And I love that. I really, really love that, because I think that it's time we all got a little bit free of sectarian restraint. And those who want to do it with absolute, the traditions and the rituals and everything else that they want, good luck to them. As long as you do it with meaning, not with, like so many people do Vajrayana, but they don't do it with real meaning of what they actually understand about it. So they do it, sometimes maybe they do it because I put it on these things. Don't really understand exactly what it's about and how it is. I'm just going to mute you because somebody's got the thing on and it's actually interrupting. Don't worry, I'll just mute you all, then it's fine. Then you can unmute when you want to talk. But I think that's very important. And I wanted to start with this truthful story of the 16th Karmapa when he was ill. And Kalu Rinpoche writes about the truth of his illness. I want you to listen very carefully. He says, in 1981, I was present during the Jalwa Karmapa's last illness, and I believe that I saw what was then a fulfillment of Guru Rinpoche's prophecy. By the time I saw him, His Holiness had already had many operations, some parts of his body removed, and things put inside him, his blood transfused, and so on. Every day, the doctors discovered symptoms of some new disease, only to find them gone the next day and replaced by another illness, as if all the diseases in the world were finding room in his flesh. For 2 months, he'd taken no solid food, and finally his doctors gave up hope. It was impossible for him to live, and the doctors thought the life support systems should be disconnected. But the Karmapa said, no, I'm going to live. Leave them in place. And he did live, astonishing the doctors and remaining seemingly at ease in his situation, humorous, playful, smiling, as if he were rejoicing at everything his body suffered. Then I thought, says Kalu Rinpoche, with the clearest possible conviction, that the Karmapa had submitted to all this cutting, to the manifestation of all those diseases in his body, to the lack of food, in a quite intentional and voluntary way. He was deliberately suffering all of these diseases to help minimize the coming pains of war, disease, and famine. And in this way, he was deliberately working to avert those terrible culpas. For those of us present, his death was an unforgettable inspiration. It profoundly revealed the efficacy of the Dharma and the fact that enlightenment for the sake of others can actually be achieved. Now, I wanted to start with that wonderful story because it really makes me think. Because on Friday night, we went out to people for dinner. They were religious, Jewish religious people. And it was such an experience to actually see how people are when they're in a sectarian and how they believe and what they do and everything. It's actually an amazing experience because, to come into a really religious family and see how they are. And when we look at so much of this, so many of the religions are done, you know, in a theistic way. So it's a dualistic, there's a God, and the God tells you what to do and gives you benefits and things like that. That really takes the responsibility away from you. You do have to be a good person, but it's really important for us to know and understand that in the end, here we are. And we have to find that heart essence if we want to do it correctly, and if we want to die correctly, and if we want to die with total wisdom. Because reading that story about the Karmapa is absolutely amazing. And, you know, I was listening to Thupten in the holidays talking about Ekong Rinpoche and what he did and how he was, and, you know, the things that he did. And in the end, I don't know if you all know that, you know, when Ekong Rinpoche was murdered, and what's interesting for me always is that he said, I want the study in the new monastery that they were building at Sami Ling. Please keep it for the next. He knew he was going to die. And then his body started shrinking like it does for the rainbow body. And we'll come to the rainbow body in this teaching, because I think it's really a beautiful teaching. And his body shrunk to the size of a child. And Thupten was talking about it. And then the Chinese found out that his body was shrinking, and they quickly said he's got to be taken away. So they took him and cremated him, but his body was this side, he was actually shrinking. And Thupten said, of course he comes in the rainbow body. He comes as a tulku, but he can choose where he wants to go, what he wants to do, and everything. So that's how I look at this new temple. Like, this is a temple where he can use it as a base. And these masters, you never know about them, what they are, where they are. But do not think, oh, that is absolutely amazing that they do it. What about us? What about little us? I mean, we can do it too. If you just wake up to who you are. And this holiday has been a really upside down thing for me, but I'll come to that in a moment, okay? But I want you to understand that if you can really understand your heart essence, you can definitely become enlightened in this life. And what else is there? I had 3 people during the holidays who used to live in South Africa who've immigrated, actually 4, who've immigrated and who are so unhappy where they are. And I had texting and speaking to these people. I said, but this is just temporary, transient, impermanent. Don't worry about it. It's just temporary and transient, but try and get to your heart essence so that you can free yourself. Don't worry too much about the external circumstances. Work it out. And I think this beautiful story that the Buddha, actually comes from Anuttara Nikaya. He said, suppose a goldsmith takes his tongs and puts some gold into the furnace to melt it. If he blows on the heat too much, it will get too hot. But if he sprinkles too much water, it will cool down. If he constantly takes it out, looks at it, it will not reach refinement. But if he does all these things from time to time, aware of the nature of gold, it will become easily molded and bright. In the same way, he says, there are 3 qualities that a practitioner should pay attention to: concentration, determination, and equanimity. If he pays the right attention to these at the right time, then his mind will become like gold, pliant and brilliant and pure. So what that story is telling us is that it's really important to not intervene too much in your day-to-day life, not to intervene too much protesting about where you are and what you're going through, and why is it you that's got to do this, and why isn't it someone else, and look at everybody else, they all look so good. When we really protest like that, we are taking the gold and we're putting too much emphasis into it. We're not allowing it to develop on its own when we let go of things. That's what in Dzogchen, the whole thing of doing contemplation as your meditation comes in. Not too much intervention, allowing space, letting yourself be where you have to be, and then it'll happen. And yes, when we do go through terrible times, we have to look at it and we have to examine it. We can't help ourselves. We're human. And when things are really going wrong, it's really hard, I can tell you. But if we keep on remembering, this is impermanent. This is just the playing out of the essence. This is just the circumstances I have to go to. Then it really changes. I'm just going to give you one other paragraph and throw it open if you want to say anything. So my relationship with the Golden Letters book or text, I haven't even got it here in my house. It's packed away, so I couldn't even go back over it. I've only got my silver book with all my notes, which is a lot of notes. This book is full, and that's what I want to teach you and everything. But I told you last year, and I'll tell you very briefly again, that when I was in retreat in India, the girl across the way from the retreat house had this book, and she wouldn't let me read it except when I came to her house. Okay, I mean, she could see my retreat place from her house. She could see that I was really very keen on the whole thing, but she wouldn't let me take it to my place. I said, just let me take it for one night. It was exactly what I wanted at that particular time, and she wouldn't let me. Okay, and maybe there was something really in that, because when you look in the mirror, you know, maybe I had to learn. You can't just have what you want when you want, Melanie. And it all brings you down in the end, and then you find your way. Anyway, so when I came back, of course, I ordered the book immediately and swallowed it, okay, and made all my notes in here because I really needed everything. And I was thinking about it when I was preparing this, and I thought it's tied up with my whole long retreat in India. And that trip came to me inspirationally. I didn't think I'm going to just leave everyone and everything and go. I never thought about it. I just went. I asked and I went. That was all. And from my entry into Buddhism, I never, ever, from the beginning, enjoyed a step-by-step. I never enjoyed a step-by-step process in any way or any form. I never enjoyed it at all. I like you to let me go free and let me really, really understand things going deeply inside myself. I never was one. When I tried to do Mahamudra and it's step by step, drove me absolutely mad. Okay, and that's just my personality, my way, my being. But for everyone else, hello, Kasturi, we're happy to have you. I'm sorry you missed all the intro and everything, but never mind. So for me, I never enjoyed a step-by-step process because I always knew there was more. And with all the things that I went through in that 6-month process, being thrown out of the retreat, not having anywhere to go, landing up at the Karmapa's monastery, seeing the Karmapa, asking him to clean me up, and he really did clean me up, spending like 6 weeks. I couldn't go back to Sherabling. And I had 6 weeks of just crying and crying and crying about all my stuff and everything that I'd done in my life. And then when I came back eventually to Taisitu Rinpoche, I mean, when you think about it, I couldn't see that at the time. But the fact that I couldn't be there and the fact that all the Westerners went just made it absolutely possible for me to really have a lot of individual time with him, which was absolutely a blessing. I've never been able to do it again. And it really was a special thing. And so first he made me do shamatha for about 6 weeks. He just said, I want your mind clear. Okay, it drove me insane, but I listened and I did it. Sometimes I'd put a big white sheet on my table in front of me to help me through that. He just said, I want you to do nothing except still your mind. Okay, and I did. And then when I came back and he looked at me, this wonderful great master, he said to me, ah, now what do you want? In other words, now after all your rubbish in your mind going in and out and everywhere, what do you want? And a voice spoke from me, through me, because what I asked for was absolutely ridiculous. If I knew what I was asking for, I asked for the highest Dzogchen teachings, and I didn't even know what they were. I'd never done it. I'd never seen it. When I look back, it was a most amazing thing. And then he looked at me long, 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 and he was looking right into my being. And eventually, and no answer. And I thought, what have I done? And then he said, okay, but you can't have it now, in about 2 weeks' time, because I need to do some research and things for you to do it. And from then, the step by step, I just jumped into it like nobody's business. Okay, it was really, I just jumped into it and have been doing it ever since. But he wouldn't give me much more instruction, a little bit 3 months, but not very much instruction. But I had to do a lot on my own, and that was really, really, really hard. Okay, but for me, it's really important that you want, more than anything in the world, you want to be enlightened. You don't care so much about your circumstances, about how you are, about how you're seen in the world. Because when I look back on that, when I was doing these golden letters, when I look back on it, I see that most of the time in the 6 months, I did not have the identity of Melanie. Truly, I really, really didn't. When I came out, I was in absolute shock because I really didn't have my identity. And maybe that is what we all have to do. Lose the identity and go into identitylessness, not identityless, identitylessness, as Dajjal Rinpoche says, which means not one identity. Lots of identities, lots of ways of relating, flexibility, not this rigid stuff, okay? But in order to even talk about the golden letters, the Dzogchen, the Hatha Yoga, we must start with a full understanding of something, of the stages of the climb upwards. And I just want to say that I am no expert on the subject, trust me. I am just a spiritual friend struggling like all of you when it comes to that. Maybe I could do the other teachings quite well, but these teachings, I'm just a spiritual friend who's maybe got more guts than some people, struggling. But my love and devotion for the subject and the practice and the master is really strong. And what is so important in these sessions that we do in the next weeks is that we study together to try and find the answers. We make lots of comments, lots of questions. Don't see me as the teacher and you as the students, because I'm too in awe of the subject matter and too ignorant, okay? And to be able to say, I'm a teacher. I'm not a teacher. I'm just a spiritual friend who really wants to try and give you whatever I can on the subject. And for those of you who find it difficult, don't even relate to it. Just go on your step-to-step progress, but hold what I've been talking about, that ningchik, that absolute way, that ningchik, that heart essence, And one day, whether it's in this or the other life, you'll really want to come to it. So let me just throw open at the moment, and then I'm going to give you some basic teachings to bring you to there, which I think is the best way. But by all means, Sharon and Ron, who've been doing this for a long time, Karen, who's been doing it for a long time, any of you who've been doing it, give your comments, give your contradict me by all means. I'm very happy, because I think that's the best way to learn and to make you grow and to make you look at yourself and not to see yourself as anything special, you know. Well, we're all special, but not to see myself as a cut above anybody else sitting here. So, Damika, you are smiling a lot. What is going through your mind? I'm watching you. That's why I love to have your faces. Anything going through your mind? Unmute, though.
Yeah, a lot. No, I mean, nothing special, just daily struggles but yeah, your teaching has been very helpful. Bring back to the moment, or yeah.
And remember, the more the struggles, the more the negative emotions, the more you've got in your life, the more energy there is for this golden letters, okay? The more struggles, because the very fact that you, the very fact that you have to, that you have to struggle is what makes you scream out. Do you know what I mean? Someone help me, do something, you know? And when you keep on doing that, you begin to see, hang on, there's a pattern. I can see a pattern in my karmic tapestry, okay? And what is that pattern? Maybe it's the biggest blessing of my life, because maybe the real traumas that I'm going through are the biggest blessing, because they're the thing that's going to help me to change my identity, to go into identitylessness and not hang on to what I've got. You know, it's really, because for me, there's so many people in the world now that are suffering so badly. And when I see them, I'm so heartbroken. But the thing is, we've got to look deeply at that suffering. It's so important, so good. If you're looking and if you can manage to get here, I know you're often traveling and everything, but it's very, very good. Anyone else want to say or ask anything at this point?
I have something to share.
Please.
So it's just related to the story about the karma. So a few weeks ago, I was really, really sick, and I couldn't lift my finger. It was so bad, and that's constant headache all day and night. And I tried to include all the things, may through this pain, no one else go through it and everything. I just didn't have the room. I just couldn't think at all. So my thought about it is, when you can't even consciously think about other things, how do you do it?
You see, that is exactly when you're ready, okay? Because it's all the thinking that stops us from getting to the heart essence. You know, it's the thinking all the time. All our stuff keeps coming out. That's why the Nondra is so important. I know a lot of you haven't done it, but even if you do bits and pieces of it, it's better. But you know, it's when you can't think. Like Kasturi, you were saying that about the pain you were suffering. You can't think, you couldn't think for a long time. But you know what? When you can't think, what is actually happening is that that human part of the mind is being taken out of the equation. And then you're left with your nature of mind, and your nature of mind knows what to do. In this book, it's what's told over and over again by all these masters. That Buddha nature, that awakened nature knows what to do. But we can't let it go because we're so busy gripping onto everything that we want in our lives. We want it to be this way. We don't want to suffer. We want our children to be like this. We want this to be like that. And it often isn't. And the further you are on the spiritual path, the more you need to say, right, I've got this terrible headache. I can't even lift my head. I hand over to Guru Rinpoche, but I never hand over to Guru Rinpoche as Guru Rinpoche. I hand over to Guru Rinpoche within me. And then I was saying to Kasturi, because she was in such pain, I was saying to, using the word bargaining is a very bad thing. But what I like to do when I really don't have any solutions is I like to do an exchange. So I say to the universe, okay, I am really willing to give whatever I can to all sentient beings. I'm really prepared to teach. I'm really prepared to study and try and deliver these talks and everything. And in exchange, please will you help me to manage to do this and this and this? Like, I'll give you a good example. Before the holidays started, I mean, my husband comes. Now, we were immigrating. We were going to go to Australia. We had all our visas, our papers, and we packed everything to go. Okay, that was what we were going to do. And then he changed his mind. Okay, he changed his mind about it completely. And all the things he felt were the things I originally felt. But now he was only feeling them now that the deed was done. That was when he was feeling him, as most men do. Ron and Sharon, you know that very well. Men only feel things much later. Women feel them all in advance and all your feeling. And I haven't got my books. I haven't got my things. This is a temporary dwelling and everything. And we're supposed to go in April and so on. And then I don't know if any of you noticed, Lamayeshi came in and announced at the group that we won't be leaving before we had even vaguely decided we wouldn't be leaving. I think he was telling me a shortcut, your karma's here, just stay. But in any case, I just want to say to all of you that I really, really was very angry, very turmoil, very upset. I didn't know what we should do, where we should live, what we should do. I don't like it in this house. I call it like little boxes. It hasn't got my things. It hasn't got my possessions, my lovely things. And so it's like living in a hotel in a way. And I just decided at that moment in time, and I'm telling you this because I hope it's useful, not to share my story, but I hope it's useful for all of you. So I decided as soon as I finished work, I need to do a week's silent retreat. If I could have, I would have flown to the Himalayas, but I couldn't because we were going all over Africa with our children and I couldn't leave the dogs before. So I just said, Melanie, you'll do a silence week retreat in this house. You will not talk to your domestic worker. You will not talk to your husband. You will not talk to anyone. You'll just do a silent retreat, which was the best thing I could ever have done. It wasn't my poor domestic worker. She said, please don't do that ever again. I hate it without your personality in the house and everything. I said, I will do it again. But in any case, I sat down. And what only came up was turmoil. And do I really? And did I ever want to go? And how dare my husband change his mind when everything's packed up? And the angers and the turmoils and the not knowing and the uncertainty and everything. And what I did was I just let it be, which is actually how contemplation happens. I let it be. So the first 2 days were traumatic. I felt like I was going to vomit all the time because so much was coming up. And then after 2 days, it just settled. And suddenly, it didn't matter anymore. I was fine. I was fine about where we would live. We didn't have anywhere to live. I was fine about everything. And at that moment, I just said to Guru Rinpoche, you know what? It doesn't matter where I am in the world or where I live. I will give complete devotion and service to whoever I can. And I will teach whatever I can, and I will practice whatever I can, and I will learn whatever I can. And you, in turn, please help me to see where I've got to go, to see what we've got to do, to see what all the things are. And that's exactly what happened. It's unbelievable. Within 2 days, I went to visit Marion, who's sitting there, Mimi, and, you know, from her, she gave me her estate agent. The estate agent had a place for us to go. I mean, it all worked. It all just came into place. And now I've got to keep my side. It's not yet finished, but I've got to keep my side of the bargain. And it's not a bargain. It's really what you want to do with your life. You want to help, you want to serve, you want to do things for other people. And it doesn't matter whether the circumstances become impossible or they're okay. Depends on your karma. But it's really important. It's really important to surrender to whatever it is that you need to go through. And I'm going to teach the Shambhala teachings tomorrow night, and for a couple of sessions in which I really want to see how we can take not only the absolute Buddhist teachings, but the basic goodness of the Buddha nature and put it into where we have to go, if you know what I'm trying to say. So it's really important because each of us has a way of conducting our spiritual lives according, number one, to the levels we might have reached in previous lifetimes. Or because for lifetimes we might have ignored a spiritual path totally. Or we might have reached a higher level and then fallen due to the ego or distraction or whatever. And on and on and on. So we need different things. And the Buddha, in all his wisdom, knew that different paths were required for different beings. So Zongsa was teaching this, I think they were a Chile or people from Chile, and he was combining Sutra, which is the basic teachings the Buddha got, and Vajrayana, and I love how he puts it. And he said, one person would come up to the Buddha and ask, but who are you, Buddha? And to that person, he would give his parents' names, the background, etc. Then one of his advanced disciples would come up and say, well, who are you, Buddha? And he would say to them, if you ask such a question, then you have no correct view of a Buddha. So in other words, and it's interesting, in one of his other talks, I told you last year, you know, the Buddha coughed. And then a doctor came, and a doctor said, you know, from his cough, I need to do this, I need to do that. And his cough to another person explained to her exactly what karma was and her illness and everything, just from a cough. So what we've got to realize is that we need different things, different at different times. And many of the higher teachings were taught secretly, even in a whispered lineage. And right now, these secret teachings are taught openly. Okay, they're really taught openly. In fact, you can go onto YouTubes and get them without much effort. But as Zongsa points out, even with Vajrayana teachings, which were given, you know, which were given more openly when Padmasambhava came to Tibet, there are great dangers of misinterpreting or even abusing these deep teachings. That's why transmission from an authentic master is essential. For example, there were very strict rules for the Buddha Dharma in the beginning. You can only do this when you've completed that, okay? And as Westerners, we're not happy about that because we haven't got the discipline to do this before we get to that. We want, tell me that, and then maybe I'll go and do this. I mean, we often are like that, okay? And sometimes when these beautiful teachers who became free when they came to the West, some of them were said to have abused their students. And you know, Zongsa says you can't tell the difference because this teacher might be really opening your real Buddha nature. How would you tell if he was taking advantage or opening your Buddha nature? I mean, Talopa to Naropa gave him a clap over his head. So we don't know if you got a clap over your head, you'd go and complain straight away. That teacher clapped me over the head. In the meantime, maybe your consciousness just has a stir. So it's really vital to be able to have discerning wisdom. What is discerning wisdom? When you to find the truth. And Zongsa says Vajrayana was secret because of its sacredness. And he says, when you understand Vajrayana and what it's really about, it's the story and the meaning and the purpose of birth, life, with all its activities, and death. What else do we need? If we really understood and practiced it, would teach us the full meanings of the mysteries of life and what a pure land is. Maybe this temple that they're building in Kensington, maybe it's going to be a pure land. I don't know. I mean, maybe if you go in there, because when I go in there, I have this very strange kind of feeling. And so do a few other people. So maybe it is going to be a pure land for Ekong Rinpoche. I don't know. You have to have the discerning wisdom. And how would you get this discerning wisdom? Firstly, you have to know yourself. You have to know where you trip up. You have to know your psychology. So your psychology doesn't trip you up. Okay? I mean, when I was shouting and yelling at the beginning of the holidays, I was like a barbarian, you know, because I was so confused. And I thought, that's not how you behave. The minute I sat down and sat in a silent retreat, then I could see how things were coming together. So why did I have to pack everything up? Well, maybe I had to pack everything up because that made me get rid of so much, you know. Maybe I wouldn't have got rid of so much if I wasn't packing it up. So you have to know yourself. Secondly, you have to know if the teacher's genuine. Thirdly, you have to know what the right path is for you. You can't always tell what the right path is. In my opinion, I think that the Nondro, the preliminary practices, is a real important start. If you haven't done the Nondra, it's really worth contacting Alan and just doing at least a little bit. Now, it's interesting because, you know, Zongsa was teaching these Chileans, these South Americans, and one of them was asking about prostration. And he said, don't do prostrations if you don't want. He said, sing love songs instead. He said, but if you take a love song, you're going to have to sing it over and over and over again because you're going to have to really do it until your heart really goes out, you know. So it's very, very interesting because it's not that we have to adopt the Tibetan culture. We're never going to be Tibetan. That's what Zongsa says. But if you look carefully at these preliminary practices, you really don't know how they help you. Like the 4 mind changes, all of you should do it again and again and again. Precious human birth, especially when you're going through a terrible time. Precious human birth. Why is it precious? Because my terrible time means that I can look at myself totally and utterly. That's what it means. And it's precious because I've got the opportunity to get enlightened. Impermanence and death. You know, I just see people that don't know anything about death and dying. And I think that's the saddest thing in the world. I think it's something, such a gap in the world, not to know about death and dying. I focus on that every single day. Will I know this? Will I know that? Will I be able to do this? Will I be able to do that? I really focus on that, and so should all of you. You should look at what is the death, what is impermanent. Because if you look, I don't know about if any of you were glued to the television yesterday, but I was watching these hostages being brought home, you know. And then when I saw that one little one hold her hand up, and she didn't have two of her fingers, so she held it in a victory sign like that, and her two fingers were missing, I just burst into tears. Because I thought, how did we get here? How did we get to brutality instead of maitri, instead of loving kindness? How did we get here? How did these people get to be there? They seem to be just lovely people. We can't tell because we can't look at the karmic tapestry. But when we understand, I listened to the psychiatrist who was they were having an interview with him about how would he help these hostages after all these months in being abused and no food, and some of them have been raped, some of them have been all sorts of things. How would they come back to life? And so he was saying, we have to give them time, we have to give them space, we have to give them. But I was thinking, as he was saying, what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. Really, it does. But that's one tiny thing of what could help these people. The only thing for me that could help them is to be able to understand impermanence, and to be able to understand that that part that was abused in tunnels and everything is only one grain in the sandpit. You know, so these are the things we're looking at and we're doing with the basics. And karma, of course, we know, but I mean, karma is not ultimate and all of that. We're really looking at that a lot. And, you know, the prostrations, all I know is that when I did the prostrations, stuff used to come out of my body. That's all I can tell you. That there was horrible, gringy, especially, I think, Ron and Sharon, you were at that one that Rob gave, that retreat. You remember where we did the prostration? And I was doing prostrations half the day, and I'm telling you something, such muck was coming out of my skin. So you see, when you bend the knee, when you're looking at something greater than you, then the psychological stuff comes up. It comes up. It came out of the pores, and that's what it did. And Vajrasattva, the 100-syllable mantra, most of us don't even know that the 100-syllable mantra, which purifies us, is the 100 aspects, the 100 deities, which is something I spend so much time in my practice on. The 100 deities. The 100 deities within are the 100 qualities of our Buddha nature and what we have. So each deity that we have an affinity with is not a deity out there. It's something, it's a quality that we have inside us that we are developing. But without knowing this, you can't do that. So what I've been doing lately is, these holidays, I've been taking Vajrasattva and doing the 100-syllable mantra and doing it for myself, but then putting all the people who are struggling in front of me and just letting them be bathed in the Vajrasattva mantra so that they can clear something in their own selves. And of course, the Guru Yoga. The Guru Yoga is so important because that's how you clear your body, speech, and mind, and all together from the Guru Yoga. So the Nondra, even if you don't do the 110,000, whatever you're supposed to do, even if you don't do that, even if you just do a little bit, you really are able to know yourself and cleanse yourself. And then you can move on to the deep teachings. You know, when Taisitu said to me when I came in after doing that shamatha, from the morning till the night, from the morning till the night. You know, it was absolutely driving me mad because my kind of mind needs stuff. I need to be, you know, I can very easily do a deity practice because it's exciting to me and it gives me a whole lot of things, but don't ask me just to sit for hours and hours and hours, because then my whole mind starts going. But I had to train it. And because I trained it, he was able to say, okay, when I asked for what I didn't know what I was asking for, okay? So it's really important, and it's really important because the contemplation that we have about our lives, just putting it out and looking at the karmic tapestry and seeing what are we being shown here. I'm doing a lot of talking, sure. And I just want to say one other thing, that having the Sangha is really important, okay? Because the Sangha is all of you, and you should all have each other's numbers, and you should be able to text each other, because it's really, really important, because the Sangha keeps you in check. I often get these texts from Karen, who does it, and I get these texts, oh, Melanie, I so appreciate you keeping my mind in check in talks. And then I write back, I appreciate having you there because it makes me discern even more, and it makes me sure I'm accurate and true to the lineage transmission, because I know she knows a lot. Don't know if you want to comment, Karen, but it's really important, because what I want to do, I don't care if we don't get there today. I want to go through all the yanas, and at the end of today, I will give you how Jack Cornfield and all the other beings give the yanas as working with the poisonous tree, which I think is really important. But maybe you want to ask or say, and then we're going to do a meditation. Anyone want to ask? Anyone want to say? Don't be shy. Okay, don't be shy, because it's really important. Or you want to comment, any of you who are really good at all of this, please feel free to comment. As I said, I'm your spiritual friend. I can give you what I can give you, and we've got to talk. We've got to be together. You should all have each other's numbers. That you go through pain, you just text somebody from the group and say, this is what I'm going through, and they will help you. It's amazing. Anyone want to ask or say? Karen, do you want to say anything?
Not really, but what you've been speaking, what's happening to you, sort of been happening to me.
Good.
And also about impermanence, no, is that I had a friend, I would actually call it, and she looked like me. She was 3 days older than me. And if, let's say, I was in that area, somebody would say, what are you doing here now? I just saw you. So this was it. And she had cancer, and she said it's parasites. And she died just over a week ago. And that was it, because there's a lot of stuff happening about moving, and now I'm pushed to move. And I was thinking of going back, and then I was saying, no, I'm here now, and I don't think I'd make it back to Cape Town. But anyway, she died, and then eventually I thought, okay, I must speak to her mother. And the mother was amazing. She said, can you believe it? She had no pain. And could we all die this way, you know? And then she's just been sending me pictures and pictures. It really affected me, because this was like there were 3 friends who, when I fell and broke my back, so there were 3 who looked after me. The one, Karen, she died, but her daughter had died before. Lee's riddled with cancer, and now there is Suzanne. So that's the 3. So that Suzanne was always also saying, come back, you know what I mean, and whatever. And I knew she was going to die. And I'm saying, so she died happily. So I'm saying on impermanence, I had the biggest lesson of really, I didn't really, of detaching now more and more, because we are so attached to people. I've
So-
detached from things, but then I look at all my clutter and I'm thinking, oh yeah, I've got to move, you know, and I'll say fine. And then, and I look at her mother, who was so overjoyed that her daughter, she believed she had parasites. She was like a matron and she'd studied all these things, Suzanne, and to die that way. And she said that that her stepson was looking after her, and he checked on her at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he said, oh, that's the way she went to sleep. And she turned around and was like in the lion pose. And then she went into a coma, and then that was it. So I'm saying that's taught me, I'm talking death or moving, all these things, as you say, so transient is now, you know, it's again, it's which is so common, is not putting off. And yes, I do so much reading, more reading than practice. And practice is my nighttime stuff, but then hoping that it sinks in, if you know what I mean.
I
And
know
it becomes easier and easier with the more that I read. It's like discovering Dzogchen after doing Vajrayana, and then suddenly, you know, I know this. And then I think if we all just, I think everyone in this group, if we just took away the silly belief system that it is difficult, and we let go of that ideology, we will all realize how absolutely easy it is. That's my input. It's so
like it
easy.
because it's so simple. Because
Mm.
and that's what I want to show you, how simple it is, but not without talking about the other things. Do you know what I'm saying? Because the practice is really, really, really important. It's really important. And I think that the practice is important. And I think that, like for you have to do less reading and more practice now, because you've got enough knowledge and enough wisdom about it. And I think for all of us, that's really important. But I think impermanence and watching your friend die is the most wonderful, wonderful lesson you could have. But if you didn't have that knowledge, and you didn't have the knowledge of impermanence and death, would be a tragedy. And, you know, I know a couple of people that died over the holiday period were grasping onto their families, their everything. And that is so difficult. So I think it's really important for all of us to go into that. And I want to just do the example of the poison tree, but let's just do a little meditation.
Mel, can I just add something? Just one thing I'd like to add. I agree 100% with what's been said. What became painful for me to hear was Karen saying she's detaching more and more. And I think when you're going through really hard times, it's wonderful to be able to have somebody at the end, as you say, of the phone, or just somebody that you can, you know you've got the support, you know that they understand the pain you're in, they know, you know that, but to actually detach from that totally, I think is bad, because that's what I do.
But just let's take the differentiation between detaching and non-attachment. It's such an important thing, because detaching, and I think she means non-attaching, but detaching, I think you really mean that. Detaching is like you meet these people, some of them are, you know, they're supposed to really know a lot about Buddhism, and you feel a sense of detachment, a sense almost of coldness.
Yes, I understand what you're saying.
Like they hardly get involved with you, they hardly warm to you, and you feel like they're detached. But non-attached has a completely different connotation, because Non-attached
Yeah.
means you're not attached to the outcome. Non-attached, like I often think, I thought over this period of time when I feel like we're getting older, now we've got to find a place to live, we've got to find all these sort of things. And I was thinking to myself, you know, how attached are you to all your children, to your grandchildren, to everybody? And I was thinking to myself, oh, I love them. I love them. And I saw 2 lots over the holiday period. But when I said goodbye, it was okay. You know, it was okay. I wasn't attached to the fact that, oh my God, this is my last day with you. Maybe I'll never see you. I think there's a big difference between detached and non-attached. Non-attached is you can let go, you can let it be, you can step back and see that all these people that you are so involved with in your life, when you go into death, none of them are going to mean there might be not one that comes with you, but none of them are going to be, most of them that you've had a good relationship with, you're probably complete in your relationship with them. But basically, they're not yours. They came through you and they're not yours. So
Understand 100%.
So, I mean, I think that what you're saying, I think you're meaning non-attached when you say detached, because I think it's really important. And I often wonder, how can you be non-attached? But sometimes when I'm doing deep meditation, I can look at all my family, all the people in my family, and I can actually, for a moment, have an understanding that none of them belong to me. I mean,
I have
with
that now already. I've got that.
yeah,
They're
they
in now, but it's their lives.
they chirp for your lives. All of them have got advice, and you shouldn't do this, and you should do this, and you shouldn't spend this, and you should do that. And you know, I just look and I think to myself, when are they going to look at you as though you did have a little competence to make your own decisions? You know, I mean, you know, stop chirping at me. You know, I mean, they chirp, don't do this, do that, don't do this. You know, you shouldn't talk like this, you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't. I mean, how did we get so involved? You know, how did we get? It's unbelievable. Let's do a little meditation. Even if we don't do the poisonous tree, we can do it next time. But I really feel what I'm talking about is very important before we go to those Ning teachings, which are really deep in the heart and simple. That's the funny part. They're so simple that our intellectual minds can't take them. So everybody, just go into your beautiful meditation posture. And it's very interesting. I was listening to a teaching that someone was giving on just meditate wherever you are, in whatever posture you are, in however you want to be, walking in nature like I know Nicola likes to do, wherever you are, is a lovely place to just come to yourself. But sometimes, like when I was in a turmoil, I needed to sit on my cushion and I needed to take long hours of meditation. What does that mean? It's actually long hours of non-meditation, because contemplation means non-meditation, means you do it all the time. You don't have to just be in the cushion to do it. But for today, when we start, just breathe in to the count of 3 or 4. Lovely deep breath through your nostril. And breathe out to the count of 3 or 4 through your mouth or your nostrils, whichever's better for you. Just breathe in. And as you breathe in, take in from where I am, I can see the sky. Beautiful blue, openness, spaciousness. Your own beautiful nature. Breathe it in and breathe out all that you are suffering your pain, your anxiety, your fears, your not trusting, your absolute any anxiety, any angers, any pain, just breathe it out and breathe in that beautiful nature of mind that knows, that understands, that is totally intrinsically aware. That's what we're going to train in. Real intrinsic awareness. When you know it, then it changes how you see everything. It changes your view. It changes everything. When you've got that deep intrinsic awareness, which you have, but when you allow it to be. And I want you today, when you finish doing that, to just look back at your path of spirituality. Just see a clear pathway. Like yesterday, we were walking in a park that had long grass. But in the middle of the long grass, there was a pathway you could walk in, which didn't have long grass. And I want you to see that as your pathway. The long grass can trap you. It's all the things you've been through. It's what your spirituality means to you. But I want you to look right down at your needs, your pathway, your anxious things that make you anxious. You're being able to turn to your beautiful spirituality, your beautiful awakened nature. And how often you don't do that. You just miss it and go into your own mourning and your own things. And see just the way you like things to be spiritually. Like a lot of you will say, I need an explanation to go forward. I need someone to guide me step by step. Others say, I'm a wild spirit. I love to find things out for myself. I like to listen to people, but nobody must put me in a box, in an absolute state where everything is as I know. I am very happy not knowing. I'm very happy with uncertainty. Have a look on your pathway and see what it is that is good for you. Watch yourself. All the pains you're going through in your life. See if you can just breathe them out into the nature. Temporary, transient, impermanent. See what it is that you can offer to the universe. What do I want with my life? Do I have something really? Do I have a mandala of my heart to offer up to the universe, to help and serve and teach and enlighten? Do I always say to myself, you don't really know, you don't really know, you can't? Have a look at your particular mode. Open yourself up to that beautiful blue sky that has all the answers inherent in it. Stop feeling sorry for yourself and change the view to this is the perfect circumstance for me to really learn what I need to give up some of the things that you've been doing for a long time that are not really wholesome for you. And surrender to impermanence. In Kasturi, I can see you're in pain. Just look deeply into that pain. Actually go to a point where you can hardly feel it because you're so deeply in it. And know that there is a solution, but it's not the solution you may think. It's there already. As Taisito always says, the answer was there before the question, but you can't see it because your view is too limited. Your view is ego-centered. Don't let it be. Open and expand yourself completely for this year. We can go on a journey together and really see and help one another with what we have and with everything that we have to give. I can see you in such agony, Bubs. But you know, if you like lying down, Kasturi, you can lie down when you meditate. It's fine, absolutely fine, you know. She's amazing and brave. She can hardly walk anymore, really. And it's very difficult, honestly. But we've all got difficulties. And next week, I'm going to start. We're going to go through each of the vehicles, what they mean, how they are, right up to the top. We're going to go through each of the vehicles. We're going to compare them to what people do with a poisonous plant, and we're going to really move into the golden letters. But I'm not in a hurry because I feel it's really important that you are able to understand where you are and exactly what you want, not me to just come and open my little silver book and give you everything from it, because that's not going to be of any use. We need to practice it, debate it, challenge it, ask about it, so that it really rings true for you. That's so important for me. So let's dedicate, and then really, I'm so happy to be here to answer any questions. I'm right here, I'm not budging, so if you've got a few extra minutes, I'm very happy to answer or discuss anything you want, or with all the other girls, because there's so many beautiful people in this group. This group is very special to me, really very special, and I will give you everything I'm capable of, I promise. So let's dedicate, Boone, if you can. Through this merit, may all beings attain omniscience. May all obscurations fall away from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may all beings be freed. And we dedicate all of this teaching to all those who are going through such tremendous suffering, people that are actually causing other people to suffer so badly that they can open their eyes. We also dedicate whatever there is in this teaching to new leaders that are becoming inaugurated today, that they may see the good of the people. And we pray that all leaders of the world will see the good of the people, and we dedicate to that end so that people can really come out of their misery. Sonam die tamche zipane topne nepe dranam pamshene jega nachi balap tropaye sipe sole doa dro warsho. Get this off.